My 5-year-old eyes watched Grandma Ray as if she were a human kettle. We would sit around her tiny kitchen table in Pasadena, she, my mother, and I, enveloped in a steam cloud of wafting coffee and cigarettes. As the two women bent studiously over the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle, I would pull apart one of her famous sticky buns and watch, my mouth hanging open. I imagined that the steam was coming out of their minds and not their mugs. I was in awe of Grandma Ray's brilliance, of her fiery wit, startling laugh, and her way with words. I knew, sitting at that table, that I wanted to be like her, to join the ranks of women who are wise enough to do Sunday New York Times crossword puzzles and drink coffee. The woman we are here to commemorate today, Ray Schifrin Sternberg, was far from guaranteed this blistering intellectual life and the illustrious career that she led when I knew her. Grandma Ray grew up the youngest of 3 daughters born to Russian Jewish immigrants in the heart of the Great Depression in Detroit, Michigan. Though she grew up in relative poverty after her father lost his carpentry business, Ray excelled in high school, captaining her high school yearbook, flirting boldly with boys who would then go off to fight in the World War, and sparring lovingly with her parents, who recognized in their youngest daughter a unique fire and ambition that they might have expected in the son they never had. When it came time for graduation, the entire family rallied to be sure that Ray was able to go to college. Even her older sister Sophie offered to donate some of her hard-earned wages that 10 years her senior she was able to. After 2 years in community college, Ray managed to transfer to the University of Chicago, and she entered the halls where her hunger for a life of the mind would be nurtured. As a young psychology student, Ray's natural infectious warmth drew a circle of very close friends, academic partners, and fellow activists who made her college years rich ones. She was often the ringleader amongst her peers in protest movements for racial equality and advancement of civil rights. Ray dove into the pilot Great Books program at University of Chicago, devouring literature. She wrote her own pulp fiction to make pocket cash and pursued studies with famous psychologists who would drive her towards a PhD in psychology, also at the University of Chicago. In the midst of this charged intellectual environment, she chanced upon a lanky, exotically foreign man who would become her life partner. Eli Sternberg had come over as a refugee from Vienna during the World War and landed in Chicago to study applied mathematics. He had a warm, looming presence and a gift for sharp-witted storytelling that attracted her. The two were married with a deep love for each other, a shared sense of adventure. Indeed, their decades together were filled with wild travels, bombastic arguments, and loving reconciliations, ever-filling bookshelves, and a dedicated family life. Ray and Eli's early married years were marked by frequent moves, primarily for his work, his speaking engagements as a professor of mathematics around the globe. Both of their children were conceived on one of their world tours. Eli was invited to teach all over the world, and their travels included year-long sabbaticals in the Netherlands, Japan, Israel, and Chile. When she became a mother, Ray transitioned, not without occasional resentment, to a deeply devoted home and family life, though she continued to work full-time as a private psychologist in her home in Pasadena. She raised 2 children, Eve and Peter, to be Renaissance thinkers, world travelers, and passionate advocates themselves. Eve remembers at age 6 standing out on street corners near their home in Pasadena, holding signs demanding racial integration in the schools, a cause that Ray was deeply devoted to. Together, they protested the Vietnam War, McCarthyism, and apartheid in South Africa, folded leaflets for Jerry Brown, and watched Walter Cronkite on the news religiously as a family nightly ritual. Ray instilled a lasting passion for social justice in her children, who continue to carry that legacy today. Ray was never one to hold back her questions, with strangers and friends alike, and was known for her exacting and fiery spirit. The first time she met my father, her son-in-law, she asked him point blank, over making lunch, if he ever contemplated suicide. My poor well-mannered father was at a loss for words. Ray could blow hot or cold, and the cold was very chilly. She had a wit that could at once devastate one's ego, and at the same time make you feel more seen than you had ever known possible. Her friends, particularly in her later years, counted Ray as one of their most challenging yet deeply loyal and important friends, and her psychology patients and colleagues esteemed Ray as a rare and trusted friend. When Eli died in 1998, Ray was devastated by the loss of her partner, yet continued to pour herself into the passions that enriched both of their lives. She traveled with her growing extended family and friends and invested deeply in the relationships that mattered most to her, including an utter devotion to her grandchildren. For myself, as her first granddaughter, nothing felt more important than being known by this formidable, awe-provoking 5'1" presence in my life. On visits to Pasadena, Grandma Ray would pick us up from the airport in her sleek white Jaguar filled with a billow of cigarette smoke that she drove with the windows rolled up. The car's name was Seymour, after her favorite J.D. Salinger novel. Mint certs would be waiting in the back seat, and typically at least a book or two to be read within the span of the week we were visiting. She immediately wanted to know what was on my mind, and I knew, even at age 7, that she didn't want a flippant answer, but the truth. Days at her house felt endless with possibility, and my imagination stoked in the exploration of each and every nook and cranny of her house that contained more secrets, creative and strange, than I could know in any other home I'd been in. We shared a deep love for Haagen-Dazs coffee ice cream, the ocean, and an immersion in books and words. Even to the very end of her life, Ray remained stubborn and fierce in her carriage. She died in her own home, no doubt smoking her cigarettes until her last breath, surrounded by her books and her children, leaving a potent legacy. Ray's innate inner fire ignited mine, and her memories are forever seared in my brain, as they are in all of those whom she touched. What I believe I, and perhaps many of you, will miss most about Ray was her ability to make you feel seen, illuminated from the inside out. I leave you with a poem that I hold now in my heart as I remember her. You have my attention, which is a tenderness beyond which I may say, and I have your constancy to something beyond myself. The force of your commitment charges us. We may live in the sweep of it, taking courage one for another.